Hi, and welcome to another Graphite Studio tutorial. In this video, we'll create a contact managing application. We'll go over how to download and open an implementation project, add a library to a project, we'll create entities with properties, add project resources, create and add element packs, we'll cover how to use system-defined functions, how to create a database, we'll build a modal dialog, and you'll learn how to save entities to a database. To start off, let's go to the Knowledge Center and download the project we will be using for this tutorial. Go to the Sample Projects section and download the Manage Contacts Starter project. Once it's downloaded, run the installer and go through the steps. Make sure to install the project in the local implementation folder. This should be quick, and the project is installed. Now open Graphite Studio. When Graphite Studio opens, it opens to the last project you were working on. So if it brings you to a project home screen, click the logo on the top left of the screen. Select Open Project. Expand the local implementation project dropdown and select Graphite GTC Guide Manage Contacts. Click OK. And this will take you to the project home screen. In order to build this project, we'll have to first import an existing library. So click Edit Project. Here, you'll see a list of all available libraries you can add. Choose the Graphite GTC Postal Address Library. If a library has localized extensions, you'll see this globe icon next to its name. Click the globe, and you'll see all the available extensions. For this project, select the United States option, and click Next. This page shows all the components in the library that are part of this project. For postal address, you see address, country, USA address, USA state, and USA territory. Select all the entities except the USA territories. And click OK. Back on the project homepage, you'll see that the library has been added as a category with all the entities that are part of that library. Let's create an entity with some properties. First, create a category called Contacts. In Contacts, let's add an entity. When you create a new entity, you have the option to model the new entity from an already existing entity. Select Yes, and for the drop-down that shows up, select Person, because we want the new entity called Contact to inherit properties from the entity called Person. Click OK. Here, you can see the properties that were inherited from Person displayed in gray. To get a better idea of what's going on here, let's review. Go to the search bar and search Person. You'll see the properties that were brought in from the library. First name and last name are displayed here. These are now being populated in the properties of the entity Contact, because it is inheriting properties from the entity Person. Now let's add some more properties. This is where you input all the property details. The first property I'm going to add is email address. For of type, select text. And click OK. Now add another property and call it home number. Set of type to text. Next, add a property and call it mobile number. Set of type to text. The next property will be the home address, and the complex type will be USA address, which is an entity that was brought in with the postal address library. Let's add the final property and call it date of birth. And for type, select date. And save the entity. Now all the properties for the entity contact are set up. For the rest of the project, we will be adding the logic needed to manage the set of contacts. But before we do that, let's add a resource to the project. Go back to the project homepage and select the Add Edit link and select Resource. Here we can upload all kinds of image resources that we can use in our project. These image resources can be theme specific, but in this case, we want the image to be the same across all themes, so select Common. Click Add Resource and navigate to the resource we need. Go to Documents, Graphite GTC, Local Implementation, Graphite GTC Guide, Manage Contacts, Implementation, Resources, Installer, and select the Graphite GTC Guide PNG and click OK. Now we will create a view element pack, which is a collection of view elements that can be reused in multiple views. They can be created in library projects, as well as web application projects. Go to the Add Edit dropdown and choose Element Pack. Name the element pack Contacts Header Pack and save it. Within the palette, add a display area and name it Contact Header Area. Add an image to this display area and name it Graphite GTC Logo. For the image field, choose the resource we just added. Now save the element pack. Add a user link panel and name it Contact User Link Panel. And click Save again. Double click on the preview and you'll see the logo we just added and the user link panel. For any element pack, the default background is white, so you may not be able to see all the elements until you add it to the view. Go back to the project homepage and click on the Add Edit link again. Now we're going to add a new view, so click New View and name the new view Home. All the views we create for this project will go into a group called Contacts. So replace the word root to Contacts. Make this the default view and give it the name Home. And save it. Now we'll add the element pack to the header section. So click the plus and select Element Pack. In the properties, select the element pack we just created and call the element pack Contacts Header. And save. When you look at the preview now, you'll be able to see the logo with the user link panel in the page header. Let's now add some more view elements. You can free up some space by collapsing the content area. Now add a breadcrumb to the header. Name it Home Breadcrumb. Choose Contacts Home and give it the title Home. Now add a toolbar panel and call it Home Toolbar Panel. Give it the title Home, and you'll see the preview automatically updating. To the Home Toolbar Panel links, add a Modal link. When the user clicks this link, it will bring up a Modal dialog for them to add contacts with. Name this Add Contact link. Click the icon property and choose the plus icon. To make things easier, you can search the icons, so search for plus. Let's check out the preview quickly. You can see that the plus icon was added to the right of the toolbar panel. Save the view, and expand the footer palette. In the footer palette, add a display area and call it Home Footer Area. Add a heading, and call it copyright heading. In the text field, call it copyright Graphite GTC. Now save the view. To make sure the copyright is clearly visible, let's add a few properties to the home footer area. Click on the home footer display area and go to the padding section. Add bottom padding of 5, set left to 10, and top padding to 5. To reduce the size of the copyright, click on the copyright heading in the footer area and change the importance to 2 or 3. This will reduce the size of the text in the footer. Later, when we're going through the translations, we will be able to add the copyright symbol and the spaces, but leave it like this for now. In the next step, let's add details to the contact section of this view, where we will be displaying all the contacts stored in the database. Go to the Content palette and add a display panel. Name the display panel Contact Panel, and give it the title Contacts. The display panel has the capability to hold one or more display details and one or more links. Let's add a display detail to the contact panel and give it the name Contact Detail. There will be one of these for every contact in the database. Change the type to be highlightable. The contact detail will contain one or more display items and one or more links. Let's start by adding 6 display items, one for each item in the contact information. Name, date of birth, mobile number, home number, email address, street address. So let's go through and set the properties of each. Call the first one Name Item and give it the label Name. For the next one, give it the name Date of Birth Item and give it the label Date of Birth. Set the mask to preceding zeros. The next one we'll call Mobile Number Item and give it the label Mobile Number. Set the mask to US Phone Number. Give the next field the name Home Number Item. Set the label to Home Number and choose US Phone Number for the mask. Set the next display item name to Email Address Item and the label to Email Address. And for the last one, give it the name Address Item and give it the label Address. For this display item, set the span row property to Yes, so the whole second row will display the address. Now add 2 links to the display detail. The first will be a button and will be used to delete a contact. Go to its properties and call it Delete Contact Button. In the display properties, for style, select Clear. And for the icon, choose the trash can icon. We'll also add another button to edit the contact. So add another modal link and name it Edit Contact Link. Go into the display properties and give it the style clear. For the icon property, choose the pencil icon. Now save the view and double-click the preview to open a larger view. This is where all the contacts will be displayed. For every contact in the database, there will be an individual contact detail listing out all the display items we just added. In order for this to happen, we need to indicate that this contact detail is not static, but dynamic. Within the properties of the contact panel display details view element, you will see a switch that says is dynamic. By default, it is set to no, so set this to yes. What this means is that every contact detail that goes into the panel will be programmatically created and added to this list of display details. But we'll go over that more later. For now, let's go back to the home page and add the translations for the view elements we just created. Go through and fill out the translations. Here you can add all the spaces between words. For single words such as home, it's good practice just to include the translation even if it's the same thing. When you finish going through the translations, click Save. Now let's go back to the home view we built and see how these translations change the display item titles. Refresh the page and expand the preview. You can see that they were all updated. In order to load the contacts from the database and display them, we first have to create 3 view behaviors. Go to the Behaviors tab and click Add Behavior. Let's name the first one Build Contact Detail. Double-click the start shape, then select Add. This behavior will take its input as a contact, so select Contact for type, and name the input variable Contact in Context. Now add an output. The input will return a contact detail. Name it New Contact Detail, and select Output. Click Add, and save the flowchart. The first shape we will add is the Create shape. We will use this to create the new contact detail. In the Create an Instance of field, select Contact Detail, and name it New Contact Detail. One of the new properties in the new contact detail we have to set up is the ID. This makes sure that each instance on the view is unique. So in the ID field, add Contact in Context. Click OK. The next step will be to set up all the display items in the contact detail. We'll use the Assign shape. So add an Assign shape and double click on it. Then select Add. For set, enter in New Contact Detail, .contact display items, .name item, .value. And in the equals field, we're going to use a system-defined function. Graphite Studio has a lot of system-defined functions. In the references section in the knowledge base, there's a document called System-Defined Functions that is worth reviewing. The one that we will be using is the text concatenate, which will concatenate a comma-separated list of variables and literals. So in the field, enter text.concatenate, contact in context, first name with a space in between, then contact in context, last name. Click Add. The next item is date of birth. Click Add, and for set, enter New Contact Detail, .contact detail display items, .date of birth item, .value. And in the next field, type Contact in Context, .date of birth. Click Add. Next, add the home number item. type in new contact detail dot contact detail display items dot home number item dot value. Then enter contact in context dot home number. Let's add the mobile number item. Type in new contact detail dot contact detail display items dot mobile number item dot value. In the next field, type in contact in context dot mobile number. The last item will be the address. The address is going to be a sub-item called home address, which has 4 properties. We can use the text.concatenate and build the home address. But a better way is to call a method that USA address already contains, which creates the punctuated address line. So let's do that. Add a run behavior, double click on it. For source, choose USA address, and it will have a get punctuated line method, which takes in USA address as a parameter. So type in contact in context dot home address. And the output, which is USA address get punctuated line result dot outputs dot address line, is a text. Now add another assigned shape. Then select add. And for the set field, enter new contact detail dot contact detail display items dot address item dot value is USA address get punctuated line result dot outputs dot address line. Click add and OK. This completes this first flowchart. To simplify the generated comment, override it with the comment set address display item. And save the flowchart. Now click on the view name and go back to the view and add another behavior. Name this behavior build contact details and save it. Double click the start shape and add an input. Set the type to contact and name the variable contacts. And because it will be a list of contacts, change single instance to list. Now click add. Let's add the output. This behavior will return a list of contact details, so choose contact detail for type and name it contact details. And now set this as a list. This behavior will receive a list of contacts and return a list of contact details. Click OK. The first shape will be a create shape, so we can initialize the output list. Double click the create shape, and for the entity, select contact detail. And make this a list with the name contact details. What this will do is initialize the list into an empty list of contact details. The next shape will be a repeat shape, also called a loop. Now we'll enter the loop criteria. The loop criteria falls into 2 types, the for each loop and the while loop. For this example, select the for each loop. This will run each contact in the contacts input through the loop to create a contact detail and add it to the list. So select loop item in contacts, which is the input. Set as to contact in context. In C#, this is the same as saying for each, open bracket, var, contact in context, in contacts, close bracket. To add shapes into the loop, push the plus button inside the dotted area. The first shape will be run behavior. Double click on it and for from, choose contacts home and select run build contact detail, which is the behavior we already built. It expects the contact in context as one contact. We already have one loop variable that is named the same, and the result is a whole contact detail, which will be added to the list of contact details. So this contact detail will be accessed by using this keyword .outputs .new contact detail. In order to manipulate a list, you have a list management shape. Let's add that inside the loop. There are several things you can do to a list. You can add an item, add a list to a list, merge lists, merge a range of items, remove a list, or replace a list. In this case, let's add the output, which is the new contact detail, to the list of contact details. Type in home build contact detail result .outputs .new contact detail and add that to contact details, which was initialized in this shape. Click OK. And that is the end of our method, so add the end shape. One of the things we highly recommend is that when using the loop, keep them simple. This eases code review efforts and keeps things organized. The final behavior we'll be creating in the contact homepage is the build contact panel. Add one more behavior. Its role will be to load the contacts from the database, create the list of contact details, and add it to the contact panel. Let's call it build contact panel. Double-click the start shape, then select Add. If we select Input-Output type here, this means that this behavior will receive and return a particular variable. One of the specialized input variable names that Graphite provides in view behaviors is called view. Let's name this variable view and choose the type contacts home. Naming this view gives us the ability to directly access all the properties of the UI elements or view elements we created in the view by using dot notation. Now click OK. And quickly save the flowchart. Now the first step in this flowchart will be to load data from the database. In this case, we'll use the data lookup shape. When you double click, the field Find gives you the option to load one row, the first row, or a list of items from the database. Graphite will load the rows and serialize the objects, so you only work with a list of entities, and you don't have to write the repository layer that contains records to objects. All this is automatically generated for you. In this case, I'm going to load a list of contacts and name the variable contacts. In this load, there won't be any particular criteria, but we are going to sort the results. So click Add Sort By near the bottom of the dialog box and enter in Sort By First Name. Add another Sort By and make it Last Name. And click OK. Now, we're going to add a run behavior shape to call the build contact details behavior we made earlier. So the process source will be the contact's home, and select the build contact details behavior. What this does is take the list of contacts we have and loads them in the variable called contacts. And when we get the contact details, they will be added to the panel. Let's just take a minute to review. Save the flowchart. If we go back to the view, you can see we created the contact panel and a list of contact details in the contact panel. Although it looks like there's only one contact detail, because we changed the contact panel display details to dynamic, this contact detail will not be added by default, but populated from the database. This is the behavior we are currently building in the build contact panel flowchart. This behavior will convert the contacts into contact details and display them as view elements. The next step is to add a list management shape. Select Add Range and enter Home Build Contact Detail Result .outputs .contact details, and they're being added to contact panel .display details. Click OK and add an end shape. This flowchart is now complete, so click Save. The final step will be to call this behavior from the onload view behavior of the contact's home view. So now, let's go to the contact's home view. Go to Behaviors and click Onload View. To add a shape between two shapes already in the flowchart, click the arrow and press Delete. Add a run behavior between them. Double-click the new run behavior and select Contact Home. And choose Build Contact Panel. Contact Panel expects a variable of type contact's home, and that is available to us in the onload view as an output. So type in view here as an input and an output, and click OK. Save, and now let's go build and deploy this project. As you can see, the project is currently set to release build. To save time, go to settings and we'll make some quick changes. Select the debug tab and set the project to debug mode. Click the license tab and extend the trial another 30 days. Now click build. You can see that the project now says it's building in debug mode. When the project finishes building, click the project link to go to the application. Looks like we have a system error. That's because we did not generate the database in the environment settings. If you watch the first chapter of the beginner's guide, you'll remember that we set up the environment before we deployed the application. Let's review how you do this. Click the sidebar and select environment. Since we opened up an existing project, this environment was already created. If you look at the details of this environment, the database it is trying to connect to is called Guide Manage Contacts DB. If we go into SQL Management Studio, there's no Guide Manage Contact DB. So now let's use Graphite's capabilities to use entity framework migrations to create a database based on the objects we have in the project. In order to do that, go to the Settings dialog. Click on the Database tab. Because the database doesn't exist yet, the Regenerate Database switch automatically flips to Yes. Switch Optimize to Yes. This looks at the data lookup shapes, looks at the search criteria, and generates the proper indexes in the database. Click Update Database, and the database is now being created. This may take a few seconds. Everything looks good. Click OK. Just to confirm, I'll go back to SQL Management Studio and refresh this screen. You'll see the Guide Manage Contact DB was created. Our contact table was created as well to mimic the entity we set up. Go back to the browser and refresh the page. The screen should successfully build now. But because we don't have any currently, no contacts will show up. In the next part of the chapter, we will be adding the Add Contact functionality to this button, which will bring up a modal where a user will be able to enter all the contact details. This will save the contacts to the database so that they'll display. And we'll also be able to edit the contact information. Now let's jump back into Graphite Studio and create our new modal view. Call this Add Edit Modal. Keep this in the same group called Contacts. Give it the title Add Edit Contact. And in the properties, for Is Modal Property, select Yes. And leave the modal size as Auto. And click Save. In the content of this modal view, add a form and call it Contact Form. To the contact form, add 3 field sets. In the first field set, add a text field to take in the first name, the last name, and the date of birth. In the properties of the first field you added, set the name to first name field. Make the focus index 1. Set the label to first name, and for the mask, choose name formatting. In the second field, give it the name last name field. Set the focus index to 2, and give it the label last name. Set the mask for this field to name formatting as well. For the third field, name a date of birth field. Set focus index to 3, give it the title date of birth, and for the mask, choose date mask. And that completes the first field set. In the next field set, Add a text field for the email address, home number, and mobile number. Name the first field Email Address field. Set focus index to 4, make the label Email Address, and don't select a mask. Name the next field Home Number field. Set the focus index to 5, set the label to Home Number, and for the mask, choose US phone number. In the next field, set the name to Mobile Number field. Make the focus index 6 and set the label to Mobile Number. And for the mask, select US phone number. In the next field set, since we want wide fields to enter the address information, in the properties of the field set, for type, select long. Now add a text field for street and city, a select field for state, and add a text field for the zip code. Now let's go through and set the properties of these fields. For the first field, set the name to street field, the focus index to 7, and make the label street. Leave mask blank. For the next field, give it the name city field. Set the focus index to 8, give it the label city, and leave the mask blank. For the select field, change the name to state field. Set the focus index to 9, make the label state. There's a way to set up the dropdown right here in the properties or in the flowchart. We'll cover that in a few minutes. But let's finish up the last field, which is the zip field. Set focus index to 10, make the label zip, and set the mask to US zip code. And now we've added all the fields in the Add Edit modal. So now let's finish it by adding a button panel outside of the form. In the properties, for side, choose right, and save the view. Add a close button, and name it Cancel button. In the display section, for style, choose basic, and for type, choose passive. The focus index will be 12. Form to check should be contact form, so that when a user makes changes and hits cancel, they'll see a message asking if they really want to cancel the changes. Make the title Cancel. In the section under Warning, set the warning message to Lose Changes, and make the title Contact. Let's add an OK button. Name it OK button. In the display section, let's leave it basic and active. Set the focus index to 11. The form to submit will be the contact form, and the title will be OK. Click Save, and that completes the UI of the dialog box. Now let's work on the select field we created earlier, and go back to the project home screen. Graphite Studio provides the capability to create enumerations. One enumeration object that we imported when we added the postal address library is US State. If you click US State, you'll see that an enumeration looks different than an entity. An enumeration will have one property in it, called Description of Type Enumeration, but you can add other base types. You can also set up the enumeration values right in the enumeration entity itself. When a select field is going to be filled in via enumeration, Graphite Studio gives you the capability to choose the enumeration directly in the properties of that select field. If your select field needs to be filled in from an entity you have created, you can do that via the onload behavior, which we will cover in another video. Because we are loading the state field from the enumeration called USA State, we can go into the select field properties and click Options. Use the drop-down to choose USA State. When you select USA State, it will show you the display options you can choose from. In this case, you have the options Abbreviation and Description. Choose Description. For value, leave it as None, because we want Graphite to hydrate the whole USA State when it submits that choice. Most of the time, you don't want to choose any value unless you need the value chosen instead of the object behind it. And that should be it for the Modal UI. One thing we need to do is go back to the contact screen and make sure that this modal is invoked when the Add Contact link is clicked. So go to the Contacts home view and control-click the plus button, which will display its properties. One property is Go to View. Click that and select the Contacts Add Edit Modal. This will open the modal when the plus button is clicked. Now save the view. If you open the preview, notice that we still need to tell the UI what needs to happen when the edit or pencil icon on the display detail is clicked. The pencil icon is a modal link which has a property called GoTo. Select that and choose Contacts Add Edit Modal. Click Save. Now let's use the sidebar to go back to the build screen and rebuild the application. If you click the plus button, you'll see that it now opens up the dialog box. And when you make a change and click cancel, you'll see the warning dialog box pop up. This text doesn't have spaces or a question mark because we didn't set up the translations yet. So let's go back into Graphite and set that up now. From the home screen, go to Add/Edit Languages and go through and enter all the translations. Click Save. Go back to the build screen. In order to save space on your hard drive, you can click the red Purge button. This purges all your previous builds. Now click Build. Now go back to the browser and refresh the page. When you click the plus button now, the modal pops up. Now enter some information into the fields. The modal won't do anything because we have not done any processing behind the OK button. Let's go back into Graphite Studio now and take care of that. The next step is to save the contact to the database when the OK button is clicked. To do this, we'll be creating an on-click behavior that submits all the fields. Click the OK button in the Content palette and click Add Behavior. Our first step is to create the contact object from the fields that are being sent, so we can save the contact object to the database. One way this can be done is to create the contact entity here. We could use a create shape and fill out all the information. But because we follow good coding principles, we don't want to create the entities on a view level behavior. So what's the right way to do this? Go up to the search and search for contact entity. This is one way that Graphite Studio encourages good coding practices. In the contact entity, go to the behaviors tab and create a new behavior. Call this new behavior create. Double click the start shape and begin entering all the contact properties manually. Click add input and enter in first name, which will be a text type. Add another input and make it last name. This will also be text. Add another and make it date of birth. Make the type date and choose to make this not required. Now add the home number, which will also be text. Add the mobile number and set it to text. And finally, enter in the address. and make the type USA address. Now add one output. This will be the fully created contact. For type, select Contact and click Add. Now add a create shape to the flowchart. For entity, select Contact. Make the output variable Contact. Now go through the list of property values and fill in this information. Looks like I forgot to add email address in as an input. Click OK and double click on the start shape. Add another input and call it email address and give it the type text. Now let's go back to the create shape we were working on and continue filling out the values. Just to be consistent here, let's update the variable name address to home address so they match. Go back to the start shape one more time and select Edit the address input. Set the name to home address. Click Update and click OK. When you click Save, Graphite Studio will do an impact analysis and show that it automatically took care of the update. If you go back to the create shape, you'll see that the address automatically updated to home address. Finish the flowchart by adding an end shape. Now we have a flowchart called Create available in the contact entity. So now let's go back to the on-click behavior we were creating for the OK button and add a new run behavior shape so that we can call that behavior. The source will be contact and the behavior is create. Now go through and add all the inputs. Set date of birth to date of birth field, email address to email address field, first name to first name field. We don't have home address here, so we have to create a home address from street, city, state. We'll take care of that right after this. Just continue down the list. And click OK. Now click Save. Go up to the search bar and search for USA Address Entity. In the Behaviors tab of the USA Address Entity, you'll see that there's a behavior called Get Valid Address. This behavior takes city, state, street, and zip and returns USA address to us. So we can call this behavior and get a valid address. Let's go back to the on-click OK button behavior. Click on the arrow connecting our create shape and run behavior shape and press delete. Now add a run behavior shape between them and select USA address, get valid address. This will expect city, state, street, zip, and use the results USA address get valid address result dot outputs dot address to set that property that create contact is expecting. So for home address in inputs, type in USA address get valid result dot outputs dot address. The next step will be to take the generated contact and save it to the database. In order to do this, add a save shape to the flowchart. Double click on the save shape and click Add. Type in contact create result dot outputs dot contact. This will save the contact that was created by the create contact behavior. After the user clicks Add on the Modal dialog, it needs to close and the screen behind needs to refresh. In order to do that, add a page instruction shape. Double click it. For type, choose Navigate, and for action, choose Close View. For instruction, choose Close and refresh the view. Click OK and add the end shape and save this flowchart. We can now rebuild and test our project. Purge the previous build and click Build. Looks like we're running into a problem. It says we're passing a string where it's expecting a date in the create contact. Click the pencil icon. I'm going to look at the create contact shape. Date of birth is expecting a nullable date. Here we have a date of birth field. This looks okay. Open up the start shape. Looks like the date of birth field is a text field, but it should be a date field. So let's go back to the view this behavior belongs to. Find the date of birth field and select it. Remove this and add date field. Call it date of birth field. Set the focus index to 3. Set the label to date of birth. Okay, now click Save. Graphite Studio is telling us that we deleted a date of birth field, and we'll have to go to on-click OK button and make sure the inputs are set to date and that Create Contact gets the right behavior. Let's go back to the on-click OK button. Double-click the start shape and edit the date of birth input. Set the type to date and make it not required. Click Save. This will bring up another impact analysis. Click Continue. Go to the Create Contact shape and double check the inputs updated. Everything looks good. Save the flowchart again and go back to the build screen. Click Purge, then Build. Looks like everything worked that time. Go back to the browser and refresh the page. Click Add Contact and fill in some contact details. Click OK. And you can see the contact was added. So let's add another one. Click the plus button and fill in some more information. Everything's working. The next step in the project will be to add the Edit Contact function. To the right of the contact details, you can see the edit icon. When this is clicked, you can see the dialog box pops up, but the details about the contact are not populated. So let's go back to Graphite and set that up. Go to the Modal view and go to the onload view, because these fields need to be set up during the loading of the view. Double click the start shape and add a new input. Set the type to contact and make the name Contact in Context. Because there are multiple contacts on the screen, we want to specify which contact this is. Click Add. Now remove the arrow connecting the Create shape and the End shape, and add in a decision shape. Say Contact in Context is not missing. If it's not missing, the assigned shape will set all the fields. So go through and set the properties of the shape. Double click on the shape and select Add. Fill in first name field dot value with contact in context dot first name. Add an assign for every field following the same structure. Last name, date of birth, home number, mobile number, email address. For the address fields, make sure you add an assigned value for the street, city, state, and zip. This will look like set street field dot value to contact in context dot home address dot street. Follow this structure for the rest of the home address fields. Because state field is a dropdown, we can directly set the state property and not go into the value, because it will figure out what the correct value is and choose it in the dropdown. Once you add all the values, click OK. Connect the set value shape to the end shape. Connect the no side of the decision shape to end. Save and go back to the build screen. Now go back to the browser and refresh. If you click Edit, you'll see that the fields still do not populate. This is because the edit link still needs to be connected to its particular display detail. In order to make this happen, we have to use a shape called Set Parameters. Go to the search field and search Build Contact Detail. We set the display items, now we have to set the parameters in the edit link. We need to add a shape called Set Parameters. Double click on it. And for source, select Contacts, add Edit Modal. And for process, select OnLoad View. And this will load when the edit link is clicked. So enter new contact detail, .contact detail links, .edit contact link, .navigation, .UI parameters, and set contact in context to contact in context. What this is saying is that when you click the edit link, you will navigate to a screen and that needs some parameters. So what parameters does that need? Well, we know that the onload view of the add edit modal requires a contact in context as a parameter. And that's what's being set in the build contact detail. We already set this while building each contact, because we passed that as a parameter to that onload view. Now let's do another build. Purge and press build. Go back to the browser and refresh. Click the edit link and you will see that the information is now populating. However, if you were to click OK here, this would add another contact instead of editing the existing one. What we need to do now is set up the modal so that if we click the edit icon and press OK, it will edit the contact. If you go back to Graphite and search for the add edit modal and look at the behaviors and select the on-click OK button behavior, we need to make sure that we also set up that same contact in context here. And if that is not null, we have to update that record. So in order to do that, double-click the start shape and add a new input of type contact named contact in context. And save. Delete the arrow between create list and get valid address. Add a decision shape between them. Say if contact in context is missing, then it will create a new contact. Now we'll have to create the path if it's not missing. In order to do that, search contact, and in the behaviors tab, create a new behavior called update. Double-click the start shape. Add an input/output of type contact named contact. Now go through and add an input for all the fields like we did previously. First name, last name, date of birth, and make this not required, email address, home number, mobile number, and home address. and set the type to USA address. Now add an assign shape, and because we have the contact as an input, simply set all the contact details to themselves. So contact.firstname will equal first name. Do this for all the details. Last name, date of birth, email address, home number, mobile number, and home address. Because the contact is also an output, the updated contact will be sent back. Now go back to the on-click OK button. Select the Get Valid Address and copy and paste it. Take the new shape and drag it under the no side of the decision shape. Add a new run behavior. Set process source to contact, and it will run the update behavior we just built. This will expect the contact in context. Go through and set all the input values to their specific field. Leave outputs blank. Now add a save shape. Add an entity to save and call it contact update result .outputs .contact. Add a page instruction to close and refresh. For type, choose navigate. For contact, leave it current. For action, choose close view. And for instruction, select close and refresh. Connect that to the end shape and save. One other change we have to do before we compile and deploy these changes is to make sure that the onload view passes this contact in context for the on-click OK button. Let's go back to the onload view of the add edit modal and make sure that we set the parameters for the OK button so that it's passed down to the OK button. So add a set parameters shape and double click it. Set parameters to contacts add edit modal. Using process on-click OK button into OK button.onClick.UI parameters. The only thing we need to send here is the contact in context. Now connect the no side of the decision shape to the set parameters shape we just added, and connect that shape to the end shape. Click Save. Go back to the build screen, click Purge, and build. Go back to the browser and refresh the screen. Now we can edit the records, and the changes will save and update. And that's it. The Contact Managing app is done. Thanks for watching.